Joining us now, professor of history at Yale University, Timothy Snyder. His best-selling book, On Tyranny, is available today as an expanded audiobook. Also joining us, retired U.S. Air Force officer Sarah Kreps. She's a professor in the Department of Government at Cornell University and a non-resident senior fellow at the Brookings Institute. Professor Kreps, I'll start with you. I'm just wondering, it's hard to stop the Russians in their tracks. Is there any leverage left at all in terms of sanctions?
No, I have to say I couldn't agree more with the earlier conversation that I think sanctions haven't been terribly effective. I think the goals for sanctions are quite steep. I don't see that that's going to be terribly effective. I do think that this new military package is a way of supporting the Ukrainian military in a way that they can now keep kind of clawing back. And I agree with Joe, too, that this is just the beginning. I don't think even if these cities fall, I think this is just the beginning. We've seen 20 years of the U.S. trying to fight against insurgents. And I think we've seen from the Ukrainian military that they are very resilient. And now they will be even better resourced and better armed.
Professor Snyder, good morning. Jonathan Lemire here. You've obviously written about tyranny and lessons learned that we could learn from this moment here in Eastern Europe. Talk to us about what this next phase of the war could look like. And to our discussion a moment ago, even if Russia were to, quote, win and take that land bridge in the east, what does that look like going forward, the difficulty for them to hold it, and how that could really rally Ukrainian resistance that much more?
Yeah, so number one, I appreciate the question, Jonathan, about the larger stakes, because what we have before us is an example of a tyrannical empire trying to destroy a flawed but nevertheless democracy. That is the story here, and that story is directly connected to how the war has played out. The Ukrainians have fought this war in a decentralized way with communities supporting soldiers, whereas the Russians have fought it in a very vertical way with soldiers obeying commands from a great distance. And we've seen how that works itself out on the battlefield. Mariupol, which you've been discussing, is very important as a symbol because the Ukrainian nation is holding together. The troops that have held Mariupol for so long know that they're doing so to pin down the Russians so that other Ukrainian troops can do better, so that other Ukrainian cities won't be pounded so hard. And they're aware that their sacrifice has this larger meaning. As far as the war to come, what we're going to see is a much more concentrated Russian offensive against Ukrainians who now have no mystique whatsoever about the Russian army and who are now better supplied and who, above all, have better morale and know what they're fighting for. So it'll be interesting to see how things are going to go for the next few weeks. It's going to be horrible, but I also think the way we should be thinking about this is helping the Ukrainians to prevail. We want this to be as short as possible in order for there to be peace. For it to be as short as possible, we have to support the Ukrainians in every way they ask, and in some ways we think up ourselves.
Professor Snyder, good morning. As someone who has studied tyrants as part of his career and has written this best-selling book and now an expanded version of it that gets into this Ukraine question, I won't ask you to try to get into Vladimir Putin's mind. That's a fool's errand, of course. But what should we know about tyrants, in particular this tyrant, that might be informative and instructive as we try to see where he's headed, what he might settle for, and what he wants in the end?
I appreciated the point earlier about logistics eating up strategy, but there's something which sometimes lies behind all of it, which is ideology. Mr. Putin believed that Ukraine would fall within 3 days because he really did believe that Ukrainians are just Russians waiting to be told that they are. That's the underlying ideology to all of this. Now, being a tyrant, he can't admit that he's made a mistake. He can't lose face that way. So his only choice is to double down, which is what we're now seeing in the Donbass. Being a tyrant, the only thing which is going to matter to him, the only thing which is going to trump his ideological commitment is the feeling that perhaps he himself is threatened. And the only way to get to that subjective feeling is for the Ukrainians to do well on the battlefield. That's the only way that this can come to an end, for him to feel that pressure directly.
Professor Kreps, you've written about other ways to impose some sort of leverage on Russia, and perhaps that the IMF and the World Bank are untapped resources in this fight. Tell us about that.
Right. So I think these are international financial institutions that can bring some resources to bear, a little bit along the lines of the Marshall Plan of rebuilding the Ukrainian society, the Ukrainian infrastructure, which I think will be really important in terms of its ability to be resistant and again kind of fight back against and rebuild after this damage that they've come under. So I think these institutions that are run by Europeans and Americans but are very multinational can bring resources to bear that I just don't think has been part of the conversation to the extent that it should be.
Professor Snyder, someday, hopefully, this war will end. But there's another war going on, a global war, a war on truth. Tell us about your concerns about that war.
That's a wonderful question, because it's really the same thing. The way that Russia is fighting this war depends on a larger propaganda claim about Ukraine, hate speech about what all Ukrainians are like, hate speech about Ukraine not existing as a nation. The Russian war effort depends on propaganda at home, in which it's denied that a true war is really being fought. The whole thing is being presented as some kind of a rescue operation. It's a completely alternative reality. So that is the shape of what tyranny can look like, not just in Russia, but around the world. We have to take a value position here and say, there is truth. It matters when tyrants lie. It matters when tyrants create alternative realities. And we have to build up the institutions, not just in Ukraine, but at home. Everything we know about Ukraine, everything that we're broadcasting and learning, has to do with the fact that there are thousands of courageous reporters on the ground in Ukraine. That's a reality that we should be applying to our own country. We should be supporting reporting in our own country and everywhere we can, because not just winning wars and documenting war crimes depends upon reporters. Sustaining democracies also depends upon reporters.
So I'm curious, Professor Snyder. Mike Barnicle brings up the question about the truth. Truth's obviously been on the run and routed in many Western capitals and European capitals over the past several years. I am curious, though, your assessment of the last 55 days, and it's from Washington, D.C. to Warsaw. I mean, you look in the United States, Vladimir Putin had a pretty high approval rating among Republicans in America, higher than Joe Biden, higher than Nancy Pelosi. Now he's at 2 or 3%. The lies that Donald Trump has told about Vladimir Putin have been exposed, and the overwhelming majority of Americans don't believe it. In Warsaw, of course, we had the Law and Justice Party. That has changed. Their positioning has changed dramatically. Western democracy suddenly seems to be vibrant and strong. Vladimir Putin, who we've set up as this boogeyman over the past 5 years for the disinformation campaigns he spread, has been exposed time and time again, humiliated day in and day out. John Kirby at the Pentagon standing up, telling Vladimir Putin what's going on in his own army, what's going on in his own government, what's going to happen next. I'm curious, do you see do you see the last 6 weeks as a bit more clarifying in this battle between truth and lies?
So I appreciate you're making that connection, because the same people who run the propaganda for Russia's wars in Ukraine since 2014, the same institutions, the same individuals were responsible for interfering in the Trump campaign on behalf of Mr. Trump in 2016. It's all one larger operation. If it's not working now, it has to do with the weaknesses of tyranny that we talked about before. Mr. Putin has vastly overplayed his hand. He didn't prepare his own country, let alone the world, for this much bigger invasion in 2022, the way he did for the invasion in 2014. So before we get cocky, let's remember just how many of us were fooled in 2014 and how hard it was for us to react. The things we're doing now to help Ukraine, we should have done 8 years ago, and then we wouldn't be in the fix that we are now. But of course, I agree with you. It's a very good sign that we can learn. It's a very good sign that we're not being fooled this time around. And it's a very good sign, I think, above all, that so many people now value reporters, especially reporters in Ukraine, and that so many institutions, including yours, have made a point of stressing that the truth matters, not just on its own, but as a kind of central ideal for democracy itself. So I do think we're learning.